High above the Arctic, a whirlwind of frigid air circles the North Pole, acting like a giant refrigerator sealing in the winter's chill. This swirling mass of cold air is known as the polar vortex, a meteorological phenomenon that plays a crucial role in shaping global weather patterns, especially during the winter months. Imagine a spinning top, its center positioned over the pole, its edges extending outwards. That's the polar vortex, a vast system of low pressure encompassing bitterly cold air that usually stays locked in place by the Earth's rotation and temperature differences between the equator and the poles. The polar vortex is not a recent discovery or a new weather phenomenon. It's a persistent feature of the Earth's atmosphere, always present but constantly changing in strength and size. Think of it as a living, breathing entity, expanding and contracting with the seasons, sometimes even breaking apart under certain atmospheric conditions. Understanding the polar vortex is crucial for comprehending the dramatic shifts in weather we sometimes experience, particularly during winter. Its behavior, while often predictable, can sometimes turn erratic, unleashing blasts of Arctic air far south of its usual domain. The polar vortex is not our enemy. In fact, it plays a vital role in maintaining the Earth's climate equilibrium. By trapping the coldest air near the poles, it allows for more temperate conditions across lower latitudes. Think of the polar vortex as a giant atmospheric wall holding back the most extreme cold air from spilling southward. This wall, however, is not static. It fluctuates in strength and shape, occasionally allowing frigid air to escape its icy confines. During the winter months, when the temperature difference between the equator and the poles is greatest, the polar vortex is at its strongest, spinning rapidly and keeping the coldest air tightly contained. This results in milder winters for much of the northern hemisphere. However, like a tired athlete losing their grip, the polar vortex can weaken, allowing the cold air it normally traps to break free and spill southwards. This weakening, often triggered by disturbances in the atmosphere, is what leads to the phenomenon known as a polar vortex collapse. The polar vortex, though powerful, is not invincible. Its strength and stability are constantly challenged by other atmospheric forces, and sometimes it can weaken significantly, leading to a polar vortex collapse. Imagine a dam holding back a reservoir of water. The dam represents the polar vortex, and the water is the frigid Arctic air. When the dam weakens, water escapes, flooding the areas downstream. Similarly, when the polar vortex weakens, cold air spills south, bringing a taste of the Arctic to regions unaccustomed to such extreme temperatures. Several factors can contribute to a polar vortex collapse, but one of the most significant is the sudden warming of the stratosphere, the layer of the atmosphere above the troposphere where we live. This warming, often caused by disturbances in the tropics, can disrupt the temperature and pressure gradients that keep the polar vortex strong and stable. As the polar vortex weakens, it can stretch and distort, sometimes even breaking into smaller, weaker vortices. This allows frigid Arctic air to escape its usual confines and flow south, bringing unusually cold temperatures and winter weather hazards to lower latitudes. The polar vortex and its occasional collapses are not new phenomena. History offers several examples of these events, reminding us of the powerful influence this atmospheric giant can have on our weather. One of the most well-known polar vortex disruptions occurred in January 2014, when a weakened vortex allowed a blast of Arctic air to engulf much of the United States. Temperatures plummeted, breaking records in many areas, and the extreme cold caused widespread disruptions to daily life. Another notable example occurred in February 2021, when a severe polar vortex collapse brought record-breaking cold and heavy snowfall to Texas, a state typically known for its mild winters. The extreme weather crippled the state's power grid, leaving millions without electricity for days. These historical events serve as stark reminders of the potential impacts of a polar vortex collapse. While not every collapse is as severe or disruptive, they underscore the importance of understanding this phenomenon and being prepared for its potential consequences. Section 5. March 2025. Bracing for another polar plunge. As we enter March 2025, meteorological forecasts are raising concerns about another potential polar vortex disruption. While predicting the exact timing and severity of such events remains challenging, several indicators suggest a heightened risk of a significant cold air outbreak this March. Long-range weather models, which analyze atmospheric conditions and trends, are projecting a weakening of the polar vortex in the coming weeks. This weakening, potentially triggered by disturbances in the tropical Pacific Ocean, could create favorable conditions for a polar vortex collapse. If a collapse occurs, it could unleash a surge of frigid Arctic air southward, bringing a late-season blast of winter weather to parts of the United States. While it's still too early to pinpoint the precise timing and location of the most severe impacts, certain regions appear to be at higher risk. The potential for a March polar vortex collapse highlights the importance of staying informed about weather forecasts and being prepared for the possibility of extreme winter conditions, even as spring approaches. Section 6. The crosshairs of cold U.S. regions in the path of the polar vortex. While the precise track of a polar vortex collapse is difficult to predict weeks in advance, certain areas of the United States are historically more vulnerable to these frigid outbreaks. Understanding regional risks can help communities prepare for the potential impacts. The northern plains and upper Midwest, often referred to as America's icebox, are no strangers to cold weather. Still, a polar vortex collapse could bring even these hardy regions a significant test, with temperatures potentially plummeting to dangerously low levels. The Northeast, including major metropolitan areas like New York City and Boston, is also at risk. While coastal cities are somewhat buffered by the moderating influence of the Atlantic Ocean, a polar vortex collapse could still bring a significant blast of winter weather, potentially disrupting travel and straining infrastructure. Even regions unaccustomed to severe winter weather, such as the southern plains and southeast, could experience unusually cold temperatures and even snow or ice if a polar vortex collapse occurs. The February 2021 Texas freeze serves as a stark reminder that no region is entirely immune to the far-reaching effects of these events. Section 7. Beyond the thermometer, the ripple effects of extreme weather. The impacts of a polar vortex collapse extend far beyond just a drop in the thermometer. These events can trigger a cascade of consequences, disrupting daily life and straining infrastructure in numerous ways. Transportation systems are often among the first to feel the strain of extreme winter weather. Roads and highways can become treacherous due to snow and ice, leading to accidents and delays. Air travel can also be severely affected, with flight cancellations and delays rippling across the country. The energy sector can also face significant challenges during a polar vortex collapse. The demand for heating surges as temperatures plummet, putting a strain on power grids and potentially leading to outages. The February 2021 Texas blackouts highlighted the vulnerability of energy infrastructure to extreme cold, underscoring the need for preparedness and grid resilience. Beyond the immediate disruptions, a polar vortex collapse can also impact agriculture, water resources, and even human health. Crop damage from frost, frozen pipes, and an increase in cold-related illnesses are just some of the potential consequences of these extreme weather events. Section 8. Weathering the storm, preparing for the polar vortex. While we can't control the weather, we can take steps to prepare for its potential impacts, even those as extreme as a polar vortex collapse. By being proactive and informed, we can mitigate risks and ensure our safety and well-being during these challenging events. One of the most crucial steps is to stay informed about weather forecasts and warnings. Pay close attention to local news and weather reports, especially during the winter months, and heed any advisories issued by authorities. Prepare your home for winter weather by ensuring adequate insulation, sealing drafts, and having a plan to address potential heating issues. Stock up on essential supplies including food, water, warm clothing, blankets, and flashlights, in case of power outages or disruptions. If you must travel during a polar vortex event, do so with extreme caution. Check road conditions before departing, ensure your vehicle is winter ready, and pack an emergency kit with supplies in case of breakdowns or delays. Consider postponing non-essential travel until conditions improve. Section 9. Stay informed, stay safe. Resources for navigating winter weather. Navigating the challenges of winter weather, especially extreme events like a polar vortex collapse, requires staying informed and knowing where to turn for reliable information and assistance. The National Weather Service, or NWS, is your go-to source for up-to-date weather forecasts, watches, warnings, and advisories. Their website and mobile app provide a wealth of information to help you stay ahead of the storm. Ready.gov, a government website dedicated to disaster preparedness, offers valuable tips on preparing for and coping with winter weather emergencies, including power outages, frozen pipes, and extreme cold. Local emergency management agencies and public safety departments are also excellent resources for information specific to your community. They often provide updates on road conditions, shelter locations, and other critical information during weather emergencies. By staying informed, being prepared, and knowing where to turn for help, we can weather the storms, even those as formidable as a polar vortex collapse, and emerge